I used to be the kind of student who used to always struggle with getting good grades. I remember during the last year of my high school, I failed like 3 mock exams. They were physics, chemistry, and math. I remember feeling like such a loser, and honestly, my self-image was crumbled. I subconsciously thought that perhaps I'm just not as smart as the other kids, and this is just something that is fixed, and there is not much that can be done about it. Fast forward to 2023, I have now completed my bachelor's and my master's in computer engineering with a CGPA higher than 9.0. Additionally, I have had software engineering internships at really good companies such as Dell, AMD, and Synopsys. My self-image has completely been transformed. In this video, I will share the things that transformed me into the man that I am now. Now look, this video is not for a person who is already scoring 90% and now wants to increase it to 95%. This video is for the average student, or perhaps even below average student who's just struggling to pass, like the way I did. I'm not going to share some fancy note-taking method or some newly discovered memorization technique that will magically transform you into a genius. But what I am going to be discussing is the foundational principles. The reason why your grades are bad, the reason why my grades were bad, is because certain fundamental things about my life were completely broken, and you just cannot build anything on top of a shitty foundation. The very first foundational principle that I want you to understand is the concept of deep work. I was the type of student who had his books open and was spending like hours and hours, but I was still bombing my exams. The reason is that I was not focused and honestly had no ability to focus. I was distracted. I used to have random thoughts while studying, my notifications distracting me, the noise from the TV distracting me, my family distracting me, a fancy video on my web browser distracting me. My brain was just too occupied with switching tasks. But the practice of doing deep work changed all of that. Deep Work is this book written by Cal Newport. I adopted certain principles from this book, and the results were astonishing. The first thing that I did was started studying in a distraction-free environment. So no more studying in crowded spaces or the living room or environments prone to noise. I now studied in environments where I knew that I could simply not be disturbed. The next thing I did was put my cell phone on flight mode. No more notifications and no more calls from friends. What I have realized is that most people have never sat down and deeply focused on something. This is partly due to the fact that the 21st century offers a lot of stimulus that is constantly at our fingertips. Notifications, calls, emails, exciting video suggestions, all these things are just there competing for your attention. These days I study with a stopwatch. The time on the stopwatch represents how long have I given my undivided attention to a task. I pause the stopwatch when I go for like a bathroom break or when I have to get myself something to drink or whatever may be the reason. What I found out was that 1 or 2 hours of such quality deep work was equivalent to 5 or 6 hours of shallow distracting work where you're simply just task switching and checking notifications. Each time you switch task, like for example when you're checking your notifications during a study session, then you spend a lot of extra time and energy in getting the brain back to the original task. You are literally taking several steps backwards each time you task switch. If you are someone who does a lot of social media browsing, like scrolling hours and hours on TikTok and Instagram, then you're going to realize that your ability to perform deep focused work is literally non-existent. You are going to have a really hard time just sitting still and focusing on one topic. You're going to feel that you get bored or irritated like just within 10 minutes. This is exactly how I felt. Scrolling through social media, watching videos that are just 30 seconds long for hours and hours had rewired my brain. I had essentially eroded my ability to focus. But worry not. You can win back your focus by doing deep work every single day and progressively increasing the amount of time you spend doing it, while also quitting all forms of short content. So when I first started doing deep work, I realized that I could not go beyond 10 minutes before I got bored or felt uneasy. But each day I pushed myself just a little. And within 2 to 3 months, I was able to do a total of 4 hours of solid deep work split into 2 sessions. I also made sure that I did my deep work sessions the first thing in the day. So as soon as I got up, the first 2 hours of my day were dedicated to deep work. Because that is the time of the day where you have not many people around you to distract you, and consistently doing work at the same time each day trains your mind to be highly focused at that time of the day. So have a fixed time when you are going to be doing deep work, and then do it exactly at that time consistently. This is the foundational principle number 1 for improving your grades or getting good at anything that is cognitively challenging. My life has completely transformed ever since I started living a life that focuses on deep work and cutting out distractions such as social media or other forms of short form content. The foundational principle too that allowed me to make an academic comeback was the rejection of instant gratification. So back when I was a teenager, I was bombarding my brain with excessive stimulation and pleasure. I was eating garbage processed food, I was binge watching Netflix shows, I was playing video games for hours, I was browsing social media, listening to music all day. I was doing a lot of behaviors that gave me unearned pleasure. It's hard to read a book after playing video games for 3 hours. That's because your brain was flooded with dopamine while you were playing video games, and now you're desensitized to it. The activity of reading a book is simply not interesting enough. It pales in comparison to the world of video games. If you're someone who has been hooked to instant pleasure, then you're not going to want to study or anything that is not as stimulating. Instant gratification is a drug, and you have to cut it off in order to perform well academically. When I cut all forms of instant gratification from my life, I realized that things that I initially found boring now appeared a lot more interesting. All of a sudden, doing math seemed, well, kind of fun. All of a sudden, the task of writing that essay felt a bit more interesting. This principle of rejecting instant gratification and replacing it with delayed gratification will have an impact on multiple areas of your life and not just academia. The last principle that I'm about to discuss is so underrated and is not spoken about as often as it should be. Your diet and sleep are absolutely critical. If you're consuming processed food or fast food, food that is pretty much garbage for your body, you are going to have a very hard time focusing or having the motivation to study. Your body is going to simply use too much energy in trying to digest that garbage that you have put inside it. It won't have any energy left, and your motivation levels will plummet. Additionally, if that food is just so stimulating that you feel like you have been rewarded already, then why bother putting the hard work and studying? There's a lot of truth to that saying, you are what you eat. When I was consuming Big Mac and Coke, I was always just too tired and unfocused to study, and would always have to force myself to even attend classes. However, once I switched to a much cleaner diet, I naturally gravitated towards studying and doing cognitively challenging tasks. I was no longer fatigued, I was no longer tired. Even the thoughts that enter your brain change once you stick to a clean diet. Additionally, having a sleep schedule is absolutely critical. No, just sleeping 8 hours a day is not the only thing, but the key thing is to wake up at the same time every day and go to the bed at the same time every day. Back when I did not have a sleep schedule, I always had this brain fog. I could not understand things, and I had to read them multiple times. My recollection of what I had studied was poor. But fixing my sleep schedule had a drastic impact on my motivation levels and academic performance. If you do not get good quality sleep, it will be very hard to stick to any of the previously mentioned principles. You are going to have a hard time rejecting instant gratification or doing deep focused work when you are sleep deprived and have that brain fog. I have been a student that performed poorly academically, and I know what it does to your self-image. These were the foundational principles that transformed me into a student that was academically exceptional. Once you adhere to these principles, you will realize that your studies and grades will improve, and this will gradually change your identity. There you have it, folks. this is the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, then I would really appreciate that you give it a thumbs up, and this would really help my small YouTube channel. And if you're interested in more content that revolves around self-improvement and productivity, then make sure you subscribe. Until next time, keep the ball rolling and keep self-improving.